Hi everyone, I'm Deeksha Terry and I cover education sector for the Indian Express Digital. And today we have Dr. Sandeepa Madan with us, who will be talking about tips and tricks to ace the upcoming economics exam for class 12 boards. As we all know that the exams are just a few weeks away now, and we are here to discuss what are the main things that you need to keep in mind, be it subject wise or be it in your mental health space. Dr. Sandeepa Madan, hi, how are you?
Hi, Diksha. I'll just make a little correction here. I'm not Dr. Sandeepa Madan. I'm simply Sandeepa Madan.
Okay.
And thank you for the introduction. And uh, glad
I'll
that brought this up about some tips for the economics exam. So I'm going to focus on the subject economics.
yeah. I would like to add that Sandeep Pavadan actually is the HOD of the economics department of Shiv Nadar School, and she has a master's degree in the economics department in economics subject. So, ma'am, first of all, we would like to start with the most popular question that has been there. That there are the 15 minutes given as reading time, and each subject has its own ask for it. It has its own demand. So, when it comes to economics, what should students do in those 15 minutes of reading time?
Okay, so normally that 15 minutes of reading time, students are very anxious to write the answers rather than just focus on the reading. But that reading is very important because there is an internal choice which is given in certain questions. So, one is that they can decide on the internal choice which one they would want to opt for, and they have to now read very carefully because you have 10 MCQs in macro section and 10 MCQs in the IED section. So the questions may be a little longer, and then there are case based questions also. So reading time actually would require that much time to kind of help the student decide on what questions he would like to attempt with. Now, when we talk about attempting the questions, they are normally to be done in an order.
Right.
Either we do a backward order or we do, from 1 to 17 in the macro section or 17 to 1 in the macro section. And similarly, in the Indian Economic Development section, it could be done from 34 to 18 and or 18 to 34. So
Hmm.
that's the order. But then let them maintain that order.
Hmm.
They need to maintain that order. They cannot just skip from 18th probably to the 21st and so forth. So that reading time becomes very essential, that how they plan their answering of the paper. So it is necessary to utilize that.
So the mantra would be to calm yourselves and then just go and read the question paper rather than jumping to, starting to solve it in your head.
Yeah. So they're not allowed to write, but
Yeah, exactly.
they could be distracted at that point of time,
Mhm.
maybe awaiting that opportunity to just end those 15 minutes, but utilize that well so
Mm.
that they are able to strategize in their mind that how they need to answer the paper. So every child, has a different level of preparation. So some may be more comfortable in answering a macro section before answering the Indian economic development section, or
Mm.
a vice versa case. So let them strategize according to what they have, based on the understanding of the questions. It's very important to understand the questions also.
Ma'am, moving a step further from this, that we all know that again, every subject has its own way of attempting the paper, the way of approaching an exam. When it comes to economics, what section do you think children can pick up first, or how do you think they can approach the exam? Should they just solve all the easy ones first? Should they wait and do easy ones towards the end? How should one approach the exam?
So, like I told you, that section wise they can pick up anything.
Hmm.
either a Indian economic development or a macro, whatever they are comfortable with, and they approach in an order. So you have 1 to 17 questions in macro section and 18 to 34 questions in the IED section.
Hmm.
So they can approach whatever they want to, but let them maintain that order. I would
Right.
advise them to maintain that order because examiners like to have a kind of a structure and an orderly manner. They would like to do the correction. So that's how, otherwise from 18, if you're jumping to the 21st question, then the examiner also finds it difficult to kind of figure that out.
Right.
So let them answer in that order. And what I would suggest is that it's an 80-mark paper.
Hmm.
So they need to, spend 2 minutes per mark, 1 mark.
Hmm.
So you have 160, you have a total about, 160 minutes which are required. And the total time for the paper is 180 minutes.
Right.
So if you're spending 2 minutes per mark, so that means you're still saving about
Yeah.
20 minutes at the end of it. And
Hmm.
the 20 minutes, they could use it for, you know, going back, revising, or something which they have probably missed out, or the numericals which they could not solve earlier or so. So, sometimes it's better to leave it at that point of time and revisit a numerical which they could not solve it earlier. It would be better, but they should, have this formula of spending about, 2 minutes per mark on a question.
And ma'am, in case somebody is not able to get the answer of the question and they move on to the next one, would it be advisable to revisit that question in the middle of the exam when their brains are working completely, or should they revisit it towards the
Towards
end?
the end. Mhm.
Absolutely, so that when they are done with majority of their workload, when they know that their mind is a bit more relaxed, is that the best time, or should they revisit it once in between too?
So, see, what happens in a numerical question,
Hmm.
students often may get stuck onto it. And then that discourages them, and they spend a lot of time, trying to solve that,
Hmm.
and probably end up wasting a little more time. So I would advise that they revisit it at the end of the examination once they have done the entire paper, and they revisit that.
Okay. And ma'am, as we know, economics is a mix of practical and theory. But there are some people who might not probably be that good at remembering or retaining stuff, but they might be good at practicals towards when it comes to calculations and stuff. So for such students, what would be your advice now that exams are so close?
So economics is a very it's a subject which is generic, which you see in your day to day life. And at the same time, what I feel is that, why it becomes cumbersome for a student is when the student tries to memorize or cram.
Hmm.
So, the understanding of a concept is more important than cramming. So, if you are focusing on understanding the concept, then I don't think even the theory would be a difficult aspect.
Right.
So even in the macro also, it's very logical, very sequential, but they have to understand, first they have to understand the concept. So for example, like, if we are talking about, currency, exchange rates of currency, which is a topic which is there, in their syllabi, talking about depreciation and appreciation of currency. So when they're talking about the exchange rate, they need to understand that when they're talking about whether it is depreciation or appreciation,
Hmm.
which currency has appreciated or depreciated vis-a-vis the other currency.
Hmm.
So if I say that the exchange rate, one US dollar is equal to 60 rupees and one US dollar now is 70 rupees, I have to explain which currency has appreciated here.
Right.
It is the currency which has appreciated versus the US dollar,
Yes.
the domestic currency versus the foreign currency. So, understanding of a concept is more important than trying to memorize and cram the concept. Once the concept is understood, its applicability also becomes easier. So, if you see the kind of CBSE sample paper, you will see that the emphasis of, about I'll just tell you, the recall and understanding is just 55. It's 55%. The
Hmm.
application, the analysis, and evaluation makes up about 45% of the total paper.
Hmm.
That's a good 36 marks out of 80, which is based on application, analysis, evaluation. And there would be a 5 to 6 marker higher order thinking question also.
Right.
So, if the child is not clear about the concept, I think the child then probably would focus on understanding the concept
Hmm.
and then using it to apply it in other questions and so on.
Now we have a question from a viewer named Sakshi who's asking which are the important topics that need to be revised one day before the exam.
So, Sakshi, I think you would have more than one day, and I'm hoping that your timetable allows you more than one day before your examination. So, there is nothing like important topics that you need to revise, but I can give you definitely the weightage. So,
Hmm.
in your macro section, you have your theory of income and employment, which has the highest weightage, 12
Hmm.
marks out of 40. The national income accounting carries a weightage of 10 marks. The money, BOP, and budget, money, balance of payment,
Hmm.
and budget, carries 6 marks each. So this makes a total of 40 marks for your macro section, and
Um,
your Indian
we think
economics.
there's some. Your screen has frozen actually.
Oh,
Let's just check.
okay. I
In the meanwhile, I would request all students to keep sending us the questions.
is it okay now,
Yes, it's
Diksha?
good. It's good. Yeah.
So in the Indian economics section, you have current challenges, which carries a weightage of 20 marks, which has
Okay.
the highest weightage. And your
Mhm.
first three chapters in Indian economic development has 12 marks as a weightage, and the last chapter, that is your comparison with India with its neighbors, it carries 8 marks. So you cannot probably do all of it in one day, but if you have revised earlier, maybe you can focus on all the theory and not do the numericals on the last day.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm sure you would get more than a day's gap in your
Mm.
timetable. I'm sure you will get, because the timetable looks well placed to me. But
Mm.
unless until different combinations of subjects, students would have, so maybe it may
Yeah.
not permit, but most of them, I think, they have about 2 to 3 days comfortably, and which should give them enough time to cover the entire syllabi.
Right. Uh, Ma'am, we were talking about how there will be situation based questions. Now you had mentioned. So
Yes.
talking about that a bit, there's competency based questions this year in CBSE exams. But economics is a subject that has had some situation based questions in the past too. So will there be any specific change in format of questions now, or will it be almost the same thing?
No, no, there is no change. In fact, uh, competency based questions have been included earlier also, but they
Hmm.
have now been included in the board examination as a case based study or so on. So, like since last year, the emphasis has been on that. And economics being a subject which you can, gather from real world and real world examples.
Mm.
So I would suggest that students at least, during the day, take a 15-minute break and read the newspaper. There is so much that can be related to the current news with the subject. For example, the crisis in Pakistan, which we are watching on television or reading in the newspaper these days. It talks about inflation, it talks about depreciating currency, it talks about plummeting foreign exchange reserves, or the
Mm.
Jojima disaster, which was
Disaster.
related to, yeah, so that was a man made, or, the question mark on the man made or a natural or whatever. So, sustainability. So, it links to so many of their topics.
Right.
So, spend some time reading, and it will be a good breather and a break also, but do spend some time reading newspaper or discussing it with
Mm.
your parents or siblings or so on.
We have another question from a viewer named Rithi who is asking, how do I prepare for economics COE?
CUET.
Yes.
So I think your preparation, most of your preparation is done when you're preparing for the board examination, because you're already the CUET is completely MCQ based. Of course, that's the only difference. Otherwise, um the skills are built when you're doing your board examination. Your examination skills, your study skills, your understanding of case based analysis is already being done, and it's not done just in economics, it's done across all the subjects now. So those skills are already being built, and your preparation is mostly done when you're applying that to a situation in an MCQ. So
Right.
CUT preparation is just one extended preparation when you're talking about, when you're doing your board examination preparation, most of it is done. Of course, there are different sample papers for CUT,
Mm.
which can be solved closer when you're appearing for an examination, which can be solved closer to that. And at the moment, just focus on your understanding and application of the concept.
When it comes to CUET, considering that the format is very different, the format for CUET economics is specifically MCQ based,
MCQ based.
whereas class 12 boards are a mix of it. So, do
Hmm.
you think that the change in format can pose a problem for preparation, or should students
Should
continue
not.
the same method?
It should not, because, like I mentioned, that it is all about transferring your skills from one examination to another. You're already preparing for a board examination, which requires you to analyze, which requires you to evaluate, and that is exactly what you're going to do in another examination, which is just going to be an MCQ based.
Hmm.
So there is just a transferability of skills which is required to be done.
We have another question from a kid who's asking, how can I practice the numericals?
Wonderful. So the most important thing is that first focus on the theory.
Hmm.
So if you're doing your national income accounting, which has the maximum number of numericals, and then your theory of income and employment, first focus on the understanding and theory of your theory subject, the theory topic rather, and then spend the next day doing the numericals.
Right.
Because if you're trying to cram too many things, the theory and the numerical on one day, that would not be possible. So once you've understood the theory, then the application becomes easier. So first focus on the theory, and the next day probably take up the numerical.
One more question on CUET from a viewer named Ria. She's asking, what are the important topics for CUET economics?
So CUET also has some bit of micro, that is your consumer equilibrium. So you will have to, go back to your grade 11th also
Yeah.
for your CUET preparation. But other than that, your macro, all your topics, what we are doing currently would be part of your CUET.
Oh. So the preparation exactly
Yeah.
is the same.
Is yeah, except that they have to probably revisit the micro topic.
Yeah. A viewer named Neeti is asking, my nephew is asking how to spend the last day before the exam. Should we revise our week chapters or should we not touch the books at all?
So that really depends on your level of preparation, what you, how confident you are, and probably if, I mean, when I was a student, I would be studying one day before.
Yeah.
But if you're confident enough, do that. You do that. So, but do kind of look at all your formulae, your macro topics, focus on the key concepts. Every topic, every subject has its own language. So when you're writing also your answers, just focus on the key concepts. Like, for example, like you're using the words ex ante demand, ex post
Hmm.
demand, or probably, uh, your inward strategy. So these are the key terms which needs to be emphasized on. And I hope all of you know that you need to also underline your key concepts, your key
Yeah.
terms also when you're writing your answers.
That brings me to the next question, which has been a popular question in the previous live sessions too. That how much does the presentation of answer matter in the economics exam specifically?
So it does matter because it's a lot of theory also. It's a very
Right.
content heavy subject. So when you're putting in a presentation, answer in points. Put
Hmm.
your answers in points and highlight the keywords. Like for example, like I mentioned about job growth, inward looking strategy, or probably ex ante, exposed, deficient demand, excess demand. So these are the keywords, which you need to, the jargon also has to be kept in mind. Your every subject has its own language. Use that language
Hmm.
and write your answer in points, especially the IED. Because if you write it in paragraph, the examiner, for the examiner, it's very difficult to skim the number of points
Hmm.
and write it in points. So if it is a 4 marker, to be on the safer side, write 5 points. If it is a 6 marker, write 7 points, 1 point as an extra point, so that you would be marked accordingly.
One question, and I'm sure that not just the present students, but the ones who are about to go for exams in further classes would also have this question, and the people who have graduated high school and everything would also have had this question. That is the number, like the marks given to a question equivalent to how long the answer should be, because that's a concept that some students deal with. Some people have the fear that what if my answer is too small for a 5 marker, for example, whereas some people like to believe that the number given to the question should be equivalent to the amount of pages you fill. Is that
Uh,
true?
No, that's not really true. It's also not just about the quantity, it's the quality of the answers. Definitely the quality. So as long as the child is able to convey and very what should I say, not ambiguous,
Hmm.
and should be able to convey and has fewer number of words versus another, would definitely score better. But to be absolutely very clear about this, even CBSE, when they give the instructions on the paper, on the question paper, they mention the number of words. So like for a 3 marker, you're expected to have about 60 to 80 words.
Hmm.
And similarly for a 4 marker, these are the kind of marks breakup which is there on the paper. So I'm just
Right.
calling out that. So 3 marker, they are expected to write something between 60 to 80 words. Nobody is penalized if you're writing beyond that, but
Hmm.
then focus on the quality of the answers.
Right.
And similarly, your 4 marker needs about 80 to 100 words, and your 6 marker would be between 100 to 150 words.
Okay. We have two similar questions. I'll club them in. Agrima and Nilohit have asked, So Agrima is saying that she's a class 12 student. She wants to, like, she's confused whether she should take BCom or BA Economics after class 12. Whereas Nilohit is saying that he's interested in economics but is bad at maths. So should he pursue economics honors after class 12 or not?
So there would be element of maths. So going for the second question, I'm answering to the second question. So there would be element of maths required at the graduation level when you're taking economics as a subject to graduate with. So there would be an element of maths required. So probably if you are not very, keen on pursuing that, then I would not advise for pursuing economics as a subject, because and it also depends on the university, which he plans to take up.
Hmm.
Because for example, like in Calcutta, you have BSc in economics, which requires a very high level of maths.
Hmm.
They have BSc in economics and it requires a very high level of maths there. So
Hmm.
I would not advise, if you're choosing that particular university or any other where you see the level of maths which you can manage, and
Hmm.
probably find out at the graduate level what is the level of maths would be required. And to answer the other question about BCom or B BA
BCom
in
or BA
economics.
Economics?
So this is again entirely the choice. In BCom, you would be covering economics as just one subject,
Hmm.
and you would be focusing on business, and you will be focusing on accountancy and finance and so on.
Right.
So it would again depend entirely on your choice what you would like to pursue further. So if you want to have economics as just one of the subjects, then definitely BCom. But if you want to specialize only in economics, then you need to take a BA in economics.
One question that we've asked the previous educators too who have been with us, that on the day of the exam in the morning time, should students rush through their notes once, or is it okay to take a breath and not touch the books at all that day if they wish to?
I think if they wish to, they can morning they can just
Right.
avoid, because morning, most of them would have to reach their centers between 9 to 9:30.
Hmm.
So depending on the distance that they need to
Hmm.
travel, so if they have to reach by 9 to 9:30, they need to probably leave an hour or an hour and a half earlier. So morning they should just spend, having a proper breakfast,
Yes.
definitely. Start their day with that,
Hmm.
and just probably relax and probably come relaxed and calm to the center.
Right. We have another question from Sakshi Saroha, who's asking that how to prepare for competency-based questions. Is there any specific thing to keep in mind for that now?
So, Sakshi, your competency based questions are all based on your topics from your textbook only.
Hmm.
You just need to read the extract carefully and see that how it is connected to the topic which is in your subject. So
Hmm.
based on that only you will get an understanding. It would not be very difficult. It's most of it is on your topics which you cover up in your textbooks. So competency based is just about that. It's a little more, where they may ask you to apply, in a situation or so. And that would be just one of question or so.
Ma'am, one question. Several studies have shown, recent studies, that mental health issues such as anxiety, depression, or just, being in a panicky situation is something which is increasing in school children, especially after COVID pandemic.
Hmm.
So, what do you think would be the reason behind this increase? And is there something that teachers or fellow students can do for such students who are suffering through this? Because it has been revealed that anxiety tends to increase with the examination coming close, because exam was one of the main factors that
Mm.
students said was causing them anxiety. So is there anything that teachers or students or even parents can do?
Yeah, that's actually a very relevant question, and especially today's times, and especially with this batch, they haven't gone through the board exam in grade 10th, 10th standard.
Right.
As this was a batch which did not have a board examination in grade 10th, and they were marked on the basis of the historical results.
Mm.
So this was a non-examination batch. So, one, they should treat it like any other examination.
Right.
So, it's just a fear which is being built about a board examination. It's only that they are not writing the examination in their own school under in an environment which they are more familiar with. They are just going to an outside school. So, it's just a change of environment, but otherwise, it's just to be treated like another examination. They need not worry. And with CUET and other entrance based examinations, the pressure of board examination is has reduced to some extent. So do not worry or do not despair. One is that because you will definitely get probably another opportunity when you're giving an entrance based examination. So treat it like another examination. Do not fear so much about it. And if you feel really stressed about an examination, reach out to your counselors in schools, your parents, your teachers, friends, whoever you're comfortable with, and reach out and speak to them so that something can be done about that. So, I mean, I urge all students, and I'm sure because most of the schools these days have a support team, within their school itself, they have a counselor team or even their teachers for that matter. So reach out to them and to get that additional support. But don't, don't worry about giving a board examination because it needs to be treated just like another examination.
Well, one thing that you said that this is the batch which did not appear for exams in class 10th, and they have been through a COVID phase where classes were online, uh, where they didn't have to go and meet people on a daily basis, where they also did not have to write that much through pen and paper. It was most of it was typing.
Hmm.
So in such a situation, when now they have to appear for a pen and paper mode of exam, what would be your suggestion to them to practice writing?
So, this batch has, I can see in my own school, even though the batch did not give an examination,
Hmm.
and they have adapted so well. So this batch or the entire group of students,
Hmm.
they have, they have adapted so well. Even when they have come back to school, they have gone back on their own ways. They have understood the importance. So
Hmm.
gradually, even the school has also laid that kind of groundwork for them, done that kind of groundwork for them, regular test, regular periodic test, or term one examination or a pre-board examination. That kind of preparation has been done. So these students need not worry about it. So as far as the writing, they will definitely do well.
Great. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thanks for taking out the time today. And we are glad that students got these tips and tricks from you. I'm sure that it will be very, very helpful.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Diksha.
you.
Thank you.
I would request all students to keep writing to us if you have any more questions related to board exams. If you have any request for any subject and everything, please do let us know. And we thank you, Ms. Madan, once again for being there for us and taking out time. All the best to you and your students for this exam.
All the best to all the students who are writing a board examination this year. Not to worry.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thanks a
Thank
lot.
I'll leave Diksha.
Yes, ma'am. You can do that.
Thank you so much,
Thanks.
Diksha.
Thanks a lot, ma'am.